Kyle Whittingham comes into Michigan in his first spring, has a lot to talk about with the new coaching staff, mixing a lot of new faces with old faces at Michigan, and everything that happened with the drama late in the season last year. It's going to be very interesting to see what ends up happening with this Michigan team this year. So we're going to talk about the spring recap and some of the things we learned from Michigan spring ball. For everybody new around here, my name is Colin Bashnagel, your host here at Bash's College Football Show, and you can find me on TikTok if you either look up my name or you could try to look up Bash's CFB Show over on TikTok, where we're going to be making a lot more of the short form content, but it's also going to be very, very involved with you, involved with the followers, and I would really appreciate if you go and check that out. But leave a like and subscribe to this video if you want more content like this, if you want us to talk more about spring ball and a bunch of different updates that we're going to have through the off season. Boom, like the video, subscribe to the video, and comment down below what you think of the Wolverines through spring ball and what some of your biggest takeaways are. Kyle Whittingham, first spring, you're going to have a change of culture, a change of mindset that's very much needed, and that's why Kyle Whittingham was brought in. I think the deal that was made for Kyle Whittingham to come in was a little bit more of a short-term deal. He was a guy set to retire, had been at Utah forever. He was named head coach, I believe, in 2005. So he was at Utah for 20 years. This guy is a legend, and he isn't one of the best coaches in the country. It's safe to say that. What he was able to do and build off of that momentum and sustain it through the Urban Meyer era and get the Utah Utes to a power conference level and successful at the power conference level. Insane stuff, man. And that change of culture is going to be built on toughness, what they're going to be able to do in strength and conditioning in the weight room. That's going to be a big part of Kyle Whittingham's team's identity. And we'll see what ends up being a succession plan at Michigan in a couple of years. I can't imagine that goes any longer than like 4 or 5 years with Kyle Whittingham, given that he was set to retire. But at the end of the day, they scored a big-time head coach to really rebuild the football culture that they really need after the mess that Sharon Moore left. And we don't even need to dive into that because it's gone. It's in the past. And now we can look forward. If you're a Michigan fan, you're excited to look forward to the 2026 season and what the future has to hold. And a big part of that 2026 season coming up is going to be the development of Bryce Underwood. He got really exposed in the Ohio State game and in other games too. The Northwestern game wasn't pretty. The Texas game down the stretch was not pretty. And now Bryce Underwood, he's going to have a real coach, Coy Detmer, and Jason Beck working in this offense. And Underwood ended up underperforming in the spring game, and there was a little bit of an overreaction to that. But I think a lot of what Michigan's coaching staff has to do, and this is what they know, which is why they're confident that, hey, there's not going to be a competition with him and Tommy Carr, which you can be encouraged about Tommy Carr in the future that he has. But ultimately, Bryce Underwood sitting here with the talent that he has, you got to kind of break down some of this stuff because let's face it, Michigan fans, you got to be honest with yourselves. He came in with an ego about himself that was really arrogant, and it backfired in a big way. He talked about how you've never seen a freshman like me. Well, brother, we have seen freshmen much better than you. And you kind of have to break down the flaws in his game to get to the finished product that it might not necessarily be a finished product in 2026. You're looking to put a good enough product on the field to be competitive, make the college football playoff and all that. But when you're talking about Michigan this upcoming year, to me, this is the year before the year. I think that they could contend for a national championship more so in 2027 than 2026. And in 2026, their job is to be competitive, feisty, tough, and gritty. And I think that they're going to be able to do it. And it's going to start with how they bring Bryce Underwood along with that journey. Now, with the great rush offense that Jason Beck brings in from Utah and having the pedigree that he had even over at New Mexico with one of the best offenses in the Mountain West under Bronco Mendenhall, Jason Beck's got a really good running back room to work with. Savion Hyder has turned some heads this spring. Jordan Marshall didn't play all spring. We all know he's a good player, and you can rely on those two guys. And Bryson Cusdahl, who is back for another year. I know he kind of played a little bit of receiver, but he's going to be in this running back room. I'm pretty confident in that. And they're going to be behind an offensive line that's basically built from Michigan entirely. Evan Link is inside now, which is where he probably should be. And the left tackle with Blake Frazier is showing a lot of promise, showed a lot of promise as a young player. And Andrew Sprague also coming back in that same class. You can be very excited about what this Michigan team has going on the offensive line. And all 5 of those guys have been at Michigan. They were Sharon Moore recruits. And if you want to say something about Sharon Moore, that's nice. He was a great offensive line coach. You don't have to worry about that. And in the 2 deep, they really only have 1 transfer. So this offensive line is built still from Michigan, and you mix that with the toughness and the culture that Kyle Whittingham brings in. I do believe that this offensive line and this run game is going to be a tremendous strength for Michigan this upcoming year. The wide receiver room is definitely interesting to talk about. And, when you mix the receiving game and the run game, Hogan Hansen and Zach Marshall both back, they're going to play significant roles on this offense. Hogan Hansen as a blocker a little bit, needing to develop that part of his game a little bit. These guys are going to be really good for the run game and the receiving game. But with the receivers, there is a little bit too much overconfidence about the talent that Jamie French has, even though he hasn't shown it on the field. And J.J. Buchanan had really only shown flashes of what he could do, flashes of brilliance. It hasn't been super consistent now. Now, we know Andrew Marsh is a really good player, and they have some guys who have contributed for them in the past, Kendrick Bell, Channing Goodwin, and an optimistic, which he's an athlete. He can play either side of the ball, but Celesi Moa might be in that receiver room too. He's really talented, and I'm excited to see what that kid can end up doing for Michigan, whether it be at receiver or corner. I'm right now kind of penciling him in as a receiver, and I think that that's not wrong. But don't get over optimistic about the talent in that room. But with that being said, this definitely has the potential to be a much better wide receiver room than we've seen in a couple of years for Michigan. And that is going to be big for Bryce Underwood and his confidence in his receivers on the outside, something that I felt like was missing in the Ohio State game specifically last year. As we shift gears to the defense and what we have here with Jay Hill and his install in spring, I'm going to be very curious about how creative he's going to need to be when it comes to getting pass rush ability from his defensive line. Now, the defensive line is very experienced. John Henry Daly is a really good player that they brought in from Utah who didn't play all spring, but he's going to be a big-time piece of this defense and specifically the defensive line. He is definitely not a dynamic edge rusher. I don't really know if Cameron Brandt can be that for them, and I do like what they have inside, but again, trying to create this dynamic pass rushing ability like what you had with a guy like Jalen Harrell, for example, if you just want to go with somebody athletic like that, or why they shifted Jayshon Barham to more of an edge role last year. They wanted that dynamic speed rusher, and I'm worried that that's something that they're missing, and I'm also going to be worried against some of the better teams that Michigan has. Are they going to be able to generate pressure with 4? I'm concerned about that, and if that is going to be also a concern for Jay Hill, what kind of creativity can he have? It would help if they had a little bit more continuity in the linebacker room. There's a lot of new names over there. You haven't really seen the talent come full circle with Troy Bowles at the linebacker spot. I think a kid out of North Dakota State, Nathaniel Staling, is going to be a big piece to this linebacker room. He's going to be very important. He's going to probably, if you have to ask me, be the green dot on the football field, be the guy that's kind of calling the signals on that defense. Now, I say all that with the front 7. I think there's a little bit of questions. There's no question about physicality, but there is going to be questions about dynamic ability. Well, we don't need to question the secondary too much. Smith Snowden, a guy who, by the way, played both sides of the ball for Utah last year, he's going to focus all on corner from the sounds of it this year, and that's what he was doing all spring. Listen, he's going to be one of your corners. He's going to be in the nickel. He's going to have a big-time role and be kind of a dude who can kind of cover up a lot of holes in that defense. But the secondary shouldn't have a lot of holes. You have Zeke Berry and Jair Hill coming back. These guys have started a lot of games for the Michigan Wolverines at the corner spot. And Rod Moore, can he get back to his old self? He was a great player the year that they won the national championship. The injury before the 24 season has really set him back for a couple of years. He gets yet another year of eligibility. Rod Moore is going to be a key piece here, and so will Chris Bracey and Jordan Young too. Mason Curtis, a couple of young safeties that have played for Michigan. I think Jordan Young has the potential to be a really good safety for them, and I like what I'm hearing about him. And some other guys too, Josiah Edmond, another guy to keep an eye on here in the cornerback room with young talent ready to show up. So this secondary is going to be a strength of this defense, and I think Jay Hill is going to play into that. You just need to be able to find creative ways, even if you got to send 5 and simulated pressures and do it kind of the Indiana way, or maybe just what Georgia had to do to mask that type of issue that they ended up having last year. You got to be able to do that. I think Jay Hill is a good enough defensive coordinator to realize his weaknesses with the pass rush situations and the passing down situations, and understand that this secondary should be a real strength with a lot of experience for this Michigan team, and that's something that they could hang their hat on. Last thing I want to address before we get out of here too, do we have a question about the kicking situation over at Michigan? I don't know how reliable Trey Bukowski is going to be for Michigan this upcoming year. This might be a dip in the kicking game that we haven't really seen from Michigan in a while. They had a really solid player in Jake Moody at that kicker spot, and Dominic Zavada, though he had a down year last year, has been one of the best kickers in America the last couple of years. Do we see a dip? And if we do, is that going to hurt Michigan and affect them in the fall? We'll see if he ends up becoming a little bit better than what I've heard. I've heard he's a little bit inconsistent, and certainly longer distances, he's not going to be as reliable as Dominic Zavada was, who hit, by the way, he scored all of the points against Ohio State now. So pretty valuable piece right there, a kicker. And Michigan, part of their identity is tough defense, but winning special teams is going to be a big part of their identity too. And I don't think that's going to change with Kyle Whittingham, considering that he leaned into that identity at Utah for 20 years. So the kicking game is definitely going to be something to keep an eye on, not necessarily a big concern now. It's not going to be a big concern until, frankly, games are played, but I'm definitely eyeballing that as a potential flaw in this team. But with that being said, I think Michigan fans, you got a lot of reason to be optimistic. You can understand the strengths and weaknesses of your team a little bit here. At the end of the day, though, calm down with the Bryce Underwood panic talk. If Kyle Whittingham's not panicked, I'm not panicked, nor should you. Make sure you leave a like on this video. I'll see you guys next time.